It was a week full of blown leads and blowout losses for the Minnesota Twins. Rather than rise to the occasion on this crucial road trip, the Twins melted into a puddle under the bright lights at Progressive Field and Fenway Park. Now the Twins find themselves on the outside of the playoff picture looking in, needing a very favorable final week to prevent this catastrophic collapse from becoming a reality. What's going on, everybody? My name is Nick Nelson. Welcome to the Twins Daily Week in Review slash therapy session as we reflect on the past 7 days. It was a rough road trip for the Twins. Things did not go so well, and leaving them in a bit of a tough spot here as we enter the final week of the season. So let's break it down as we always do and just try to get caught up on all the gory details of their trip to Cleveland and Boston. This is your weekly snapshot for Monday, September 16th through Sunday, September 22nd. The Twins went 2-5 in their 7 games last week, leaving their overall record at 81-77 on the season, now finding themselves just 4 games above 500 after a high watermark of, I think, 16 or 18 about 6 weeks ago. The Twins' run differential last week, -11, another week in which they were significantly outscored by their opponents. Their overall mark on the season now down to +23. Again, was up in the 70s, 80s just a few weeks ago. It's just been whittled away by loss after loss. Twins now finding themselves in 4th place in the American League Central. Also really just indicative of this slide. They are 8.5 games behind Cleveland for first place, but more relevant, more pertinently, they are 1 game behind both Kansas City and Detroit for the final wild card spot, which we'll get into here as we get into the dynamics of this final week of the Twins season. But let's quickly take a look at the game-by-game results for the Twins. 4-game series in Cleveland to open the week. In the opener on Monday, the offense was unable to pad a slim lead. Griffin Jax giving it up late in a 4-3 heartbreaking loss. On Tuesday, the Twins were able to bounce back in front of the Twins Daily community that all assembled at Glick's downtown for a watch party, which was very enjoyable. And Twins got a 4-1 victory there, which was a little bit stressful, but they managed to get it done. The following day, a 5-4 loss on Wednesday against Cleveland, bats and bullpen wasting another very good start from the rotation. And on Thursday, they wrapped it up with another lifeless performance, another walk-off loss in the 10th inning, a 3-2 loss. So the Twins dropped 3 of 4 in Cleveland, head to Boston for the weekend, where they were able to win a wild one in the opener on Friday night, outlasting the Red Sox in a 12-inning marathon 4-2 victory. And on Saturday, they got rained out, so a doubleheader on Sunday, and the Twins were just wiped out in both ends of that one. Boston winning 8-1 in the early game with Tristan Casas clubbing 3 home runs, the lineup flatlining for the Twins again, and a 9-3 loss in the late game there as the soft underbelly of the Twins bullpen gets sliced open once again. So a rough week. I think the story, the theme here was a lot of losing. Like I said, a lot of blown leads, some blowout losses there, and the 2 wins that the Twins did get did not come easy at all. The losing came a lot more easy, unfortunately, and that's sort of been the case for the Twins here in this late stretch of the season. Let's run through the news and notes from the past week, because there actually were quite a few here for this late stage of the season. A pretty surprising move at the beginning of the week. The Twins optioned reliever Jorge Alcala to the minor leagues on Tuesday, sending one of their most off-used relievers to finish out his campaign away from the big league club. This demotion made room on the active roster for the left-hander Cole Irvin, who was claimed off waivers from Baltimore, with Randy Dobnak designated for assignment to open room on the 40-man roster. The Irvin pickup seemed logical enough on the surface, I think, if underwhelming. The Twins just need innings for their pitching staff right now, and this is a guy who threw more than 100 this year for the Orioles, was in their rotation for a good part of the year, made 16 starts. Certainly someone who can provide some innings and some length, theoretically, in the bullpen. However, his usage during week 1 with the new team was at odds with that low-leverage billing that I think we sort of presumed he would fill and that he seems most suited for. Irvin made 3 appearances. All of them were in close games, and he didn't really provide much length in any of them. Never got more than 5 outs or threw more than like 30 pitches, I don't think. He's not eligible for the postseason roster, it should be noted, because they picked him up here in September. But that's all the same, since his performance on Sunday did much to ensure the Twins won't be there. More on that later. The decision to send Alcala down speaks volumes, I think, about the front office's eroded faith in him. Yes, he has pitched very poorly of late, but so have a number of Twins relievers. And Alcala still has a 3.46 ERA overall this season by virtue of that very strong first half. Evidently, the team just gave up on him after watching him cough up 8 home runs in 20 second half appearances. In his final appearance as a Twin last Sunday, he threw 2 scoreless innings and struck out 4. Alcala was then sent down to the minors, where he made 2 appearances this past week for the Saints as they wrapped up their season, and made 2 more scoreless appearances with 4 more strikeouts. So dominating AAA hitters, as I guess you'd probably expect. His future with the Twins is in limbo, I guess, because, the Twins have a club option for 2025, but they just don't seem to have confidence in him. I mean, this is the clearest signal you could possibly send of that, whatever kind of spin you want to put on it. The spiraling Twins might get some reinforcements in the final week for what that's worth. Max Kepler is expected to take live batting practice against Chris Paddock at Target Field on Monday, after which Kepler's readiness to return will be evaluated. He's been bothered, of course, by knee soreness all season. Maybe going to try to give it one last go here in the final week. Meanwhile, Justin Topa, remember him, now rehabbing at AAA from his knee injury, with an eye on getting activated into the Twins bullpen here at the end of the season. It is possible that both Topa and Kepler could rejoin the team during this upcoming homestand to close out the campaign. If you're struggling to get enthused about that prospect, I don't blame you. Kepler has been a well below average hitter for most of the season, and Topa has not pitched all year, but both are at least capable of high quality play. The bullpen will obviously take whatever help it can get at this point, but I honestly struggle to see how Kepler would really fit in. I don't necessarily want him getting at bats over any of the guys he would be plugging in ahead of. So we'll see how that plays out. Let's look at the highlights and the bright points of a generally dire week for the Twins. Returning from the injured list and playing through pain for the final push, Carlos Correa and Byron Buxton are doing what they can to try and rejuvenate a putrid offensive unit. Correa, despite being unable to summon much power of any kind, very clearly limited, is putting together good plate appearances and was one of the few to deliver in key spots last week. In his 6 starts, he notched 6 hits and drew 6 walks across 23 plate appearances, so getting on base about 50% of the time, which is fantastic. Correa drove in 5 runs, including all 4 Minnesota runs in Wednesday's 5-4 loss to Cleveland. Really trying to single-handedly lift this team and not getting any help from anyone. Correa is up over 4 wins above replacement on the season per Fangraphs, which is remarkable for a guy who's played about half the team's games. I mean, you double that, you've got an 8-WAR season, which is MVP caliber stuff pretty much. Buxton was less effective. He finished 6 for 26 with 1 double on the week, but still represented an all-around improvement over what the Twins have been getting from center field in his absence. It's inspiring to see Buxton battling through clear discomfort while tracking down balls in the outfield and hustling on the bases. He even stole a bag. If he plays at least 2 more games in the final week here, Buxton will reach the 100 mark for the season in just the second time in his career. So I think that a nice little milestone for him, at least something to feel kind of good about here with the way things are going. The pitching staff was going along decently last week until the wheels fell off during Sunday's doubleheader at Fenway. Unfortunately, one strong outing after another from the Twins' rotation went to waste as the offense failed to make hay and the bullpen repeatedly broke down. Pablo Lopez allowed 2 runs over 6 1/3 innings on Monday. The Twins lost. Bailey Ober struck out 12 over 7 innings of 2-run ball on Wednesday. The Twins lost. Simeon Woods Richardson held the Guardians to 1 run in 4 2/3 innings on Thursday. Another loss. In the nightcap on Sunday, Zebby Matthews exited, having thrown 4 2/3 scoreless innings. And wouldn't you know it, the Twins lost. I'm getting a little off track for what is supposed to be the positive section of the recap, I realize. But my point is, the rotation has been pretty dang good. That's something you can hang your hat on here amidst all the ugliness that has enveloped this ball club. And all these guys will be back next year, theoretically, plus hopefully Joe Ryan. So there's something you can feel decent about looking forward. The bullpen, meanwhile, had some big highs and some big lows last week. Friday's game at Fenway should not get lost, I don't think, in all the garbage that surrounded it. Probably the best all-around bullpen performance of the year for the Twins, and maybe the best pitching performance, period. David Festa combined with the entire relief staff, I think every reliever, to navigate a 12-inning odyssey, keeping the team alive as the offense failed to score the runner from second in extras twice before finally breaking through in the 12th. Minnesota's pitchers totaled 20 strikeouts in that game. So that was a cool highlight. I was in Boston this weekend. I was at that game watching from atop the Green Monster. It was a good time. It was a wild game, and it felt very never-ending. Let's turn to some of the lowlights because there's no shortage, unfortunately. To be sure, the bullpen owns a fair amount of blame for the debacle that took place in Cleveland, which saw the Twins blow late game leads 3 times in 4 games. As good as he's been generally, Griffin Jax's outing on Monday, he coughed up a leadoff double to Josh Naylor and then a go-ahead 2-run homer to Kyle Manzardo in the bottom of the 8th, was one of the season's most devastating outings from a pitcher. On Wednesday, Ronnie Enriquez gave up 3 runs while recording just 1 out after being asked to protect a 2-run lead in the 10th. Another just crushing, gut-wrenching outing. And 1 day later, to top it off, Caleb Thielbar wasting no time, letting the winning run score on yet another 10th inning walk-off for the Guardians. Not great execution. You know, you'd like to see these pitchers come through, no doubt, in these spots. I mean, these are the biggest spots of the season. But extraordinary asks are being made of these relievers. Why does Jax have so little margin for error almost at all times? A 1-run lead in this case. The Twins unable to get their base runners in, come through with clutch hits, build any kind of padding. Why couldn't the Twins come up with a single run on Thursday, forcing the bullpen to walk a tightrope inning after inning before Thielbar finally gave up an unearned run? Why was Enriquez being asked to pitch in that situation on Wednesday at all, in a save situation? Having said all that, what transpired in the final game of the week took the pitchers being pushed beyond their means thing to a whole new level. In the bottom of the 5th on Sunday's nightcap, just after the Twins had finally managed to scratch across a couple of runs to take a 2-0 lead, Zebby Matthews gave up a 2-out double to Boston's number 9 hitter, Ceddanne Rafaela. With the rookie Zebby Matthews at 87 pitches and the lineup turning over for a second time, Rocco Baldelli decided to go to the bullpen. Relatively fresh following the day off from the rainout on Saturday. Blowout loss in the earlier game with Pablo struggling, so didn't have to use any of their top relievers for that. Plus, another day off on Monday. You can see why you'd turn to the bullpen fairly early. That makes sense to me. But the pitcher that Baldelli decided to call upon in this situation was Cole Irvin. In a game that the Twins absolutely had to have, with the season on the line, they turned to a scrap heap waiver pickup who'd been with the team for less than a week. And they got exactly what they should have expected. Facing the top of Boston's lineup, an overmatched Cole Irvin quickly blew the lead and then inexplicably went out to start the next inning, putting on 2 runners who also came around to score as the game turned into a blowout. By the time Minnesota's superior left-handed reliever, Caleb Thielbar, who probably would have been the guy you want to go to if you're so obsessed with the lefty-on-lefty matchup, by the time he got into the game, the Twins were down 6 runs, and it's over. In general, I find Rocco Baldelli's decision-making as the manager defensible, at least, if not strategically astute. I think people who read my writing or listen to this show know that. I mean, I'm generally a fan of Baldelli, and I empathize with the hand he's been dealt. A pitching staff that is running on fumes, completely stretched thin, and being pushed through this endless gauntlet of close contests. That's hard. Still, this one is totally lost on me. Just a baffling decision to go to Cole Irvin with your season on the line like that. It's not winning baseball. And it's really, to me, very jarring for Rocco, who I think is a guy that, say what you will about him, he's trying to win. He's trying to do it in his mind is going to give the team the best chance to win. I don't see how Cole Irvin in that spot is doing that for you. Then again, the baffling managerial decision and the avalanche of runs allowed by Twins pitchers on Sunday didn't really end up mattering all that much because, true to form, the offense couldn't produce a lick. And that is where the primary blame squarely falls for this September spiral that we're watching. When you score 21 runs over 68 innings, as the Twins did last week, you're going to struggle to win games. The presence of Buxton and Correa has done little to animate this lifeless lineup. The lack of output against Cleveland's high-end staff in the first series, and especially when going up against their super elite bullpen, which completely wiped out the Twins, was understandable to a degree. Boston should have been a breath of fresh air. This is not a good pitching staff, but instead, the lineup continued to suffocate, even with Correa, Buxton, and Lewis starting all 3 games at Fenway. In the early end of Sunday's doubleheader, which I think was the epitome of all this offensive ineptitude we're watching, the Twins ran out basically their A lineup with all those guys, with Wallner, with Larnach, with, the Castro, the All-Star, all the guys that you want in your lineup. This is not like the 2022 season where they're running out Mark Contreras and Jake Cave in center field. They had their guys out there, and they're going up against a mediocre starter in Nick Pivetta, and they scored 1 run on an error. Pivetta cruised through 5 innings, and then Minnesota got no hit for the final 4 innings by one of the worst bullpens in baseball. For a long stretch of the season, this was one of the most powerful and imposing offenses in the league. Twins ranked 3rd among all MLB teams in slugging percentage in the first half. But they were a far cry from that on this road trip. 1 home run, 9 extra base hits in 7 games, while stranding an endless army of runners on base. Plenty of players contributing to this increasingly miserable drought in production. Royce Lewis remains one of the biggest second-half drags on the lineup, sadly, and he continued to do the slump thing and be a non-factor last week with 5 singles and a double and 25 at-bats. Royce has driven in just 2 runs in his past 18 games. Carlos Santana, as clutch and as good as he's been for most of the year, went silent in this key moment when the Twins needed him most, just 3 singles and 1 walk in 30 plate appearances last week. Brooks Lee and Jose Miranda, black holes at the plate. They combined to go 0 for 19 last week. Manny Margot managed a pair of doubles, otherwise 0 for 12, including a pair of hitless pinch hit appearances that gave him the standalone all-time record for pinch hitting ineptitude. So another great distinction for this Twins team. They got next to nothing from the catcher position. Also, Christian Vasquez and Ryan Jeffers went 4 for 31 with 11 strikeouts. Poor AB after poor AB. The unraveling of Jeffers in particular has been deflating given how much the team counts on his bat, especially against left-handers. Ryan Jeffers is batting .153 in September and has not homered in over a month. It's hard to comprehend what we're seeing, honestly. The front office, manager, and ownership can all fairly be criticized and take their share of the blame for the roles they've had in this pitching staff's shortcomings, but this offense was built for success and enjoyed plenty of it. I mean, I just mentioned they were one of the best slugging teams in the league in the first half, and that carried over into some of the second half, and then they just totally died out. I don't take this ongoing mega slump that they can't seem to find their way out of as a sign that the team doesn't care or that the players are quitting. But something is systematically wrong with this baseball team, clearly. The fire that fueled the Twins throughout most of the summer, when they excelled as one of the league's best teams, has been completely extinguished. Watching different players take turns flopping and failing in different situations on the field over and over again has been incredibly painful to watch. No one can seem to step up and lift this group, not even a hobbled Carlos Correa who's doing all he can. Unless they can manage to right the ship very quickly in a major way, this will go down as one of the biggest collapses in recent MLB history. But the good news is there is still time for the 2024 Twins to avoid going down with this ignominious distinction. Which turns us to our trending storyline for the final week of the season. It is a race to the finish line between 3 AL Central teams, with the Seattle Mariners hanging on the fringe of this wild card race and looking to leapfrog 2 of them. The surging Tigers won a series against Baltimore over the weekend. They have moved into a tie with the free-falling Royals. Both teams now 1 game ahead of Minnesota in the standings as we head into the final week. The Mariners, meanwhile, are 1 game behind the Twins, so 2 games behind Detroit and Kansas City. Mariners needing something of a miracle in the final week to reach the playoffs, but they do have a chance. The Twins have the advantage of a tiebreaker against all 3 of these teams, so they need to merely finish the season with the same record or better than 2 of them in order to make the playoffs. While the Twins host the Marlins and Orioles in the final week of the season, the Royals are set to travel to Washington and Atlanta for some interleague play on the road. And the Tigers will be hosting the Rays and the White Sox. Some pretty easy matchups there. In light of that, passing up Kansas City might actually be the most realistic path to making the playoffs at this point, which, yeah, some wild changes of fortune here late in the season. But it's all moot if the Twins can't score some runs and win some games. It's going to be a stressful week full of scoreboard watching and tremendously consequential baseball with everything on the line. So giddy up, I guess. Let's close out, as we always do, with a look ahead to the final week of the 2024 Minnesota Twins season. This lagging offense does have an opportunity to finish strong at home with a fairly appealing slate of pitching matchups on the docket here in this decisive final week of the season. The Marlins, who they'll be playing in the first series after an off day on Monday, have one of the league's worst pitching staffs and are scheduled to throw 3 unexceptional starters at Target Field. The Orioles series to close out the season will present more of a challenge, but as things stand, as we look ahead now, the Twins are on track to avoid Corbin Burns, which would be huge. He is by far their best starter, one of the best starters in the league. So here are the matchups as they currently lay out. This is all very subject to change, especially based on where the Twins and Orioles are when next weekend rolls around in terms of their positioning for the playoffs. But as things stand, it's going to be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Twins and Marlins at Target Field. Marlins will be throwing lefty Ryan Weathers, righties Edward Cabrera and Valente Belloso. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. That's an interesting name. And the Twins will be countering with Bailey Ober, Simeon Woods-Richardson, and David Festa in that series. And against the Orioles over the weekend, they'll be opening up with old friend lefty Cade Povich, famously part of the Jorge Lopez trade at the deadline a few years ago, which we don't love to look back at. We'll be going against Pablo Lopez. Hopefully Lopez able to bounce back from his rough outing on Sunday. On Saturday, Albert Suarez against Zebby Matthews. And closing out the season, Dean Kremer against Bailey Ober of the Twins. So the Twins still have a relatively good shot, but this collapse has come to bear. I mean, they are out of playoff position, which seemed unthinkable just a few weeks ago, but playing some lousy baseball. That's almost, like I said, hard to comprehend. As good as we've seen this team play for so much of the season, to watch them just unable to come up with anything, unable to pick each other up, no one able to step up and make big plays and do big things to win games. And they're just letting too many of them slip away. But it's a tight race, and it's going to be a fun final week. And, we'll be back next week to recap it all here on the Week in Review. And, we'll be chatting about it all week at Twins Daily. I know there's going to be a ton of really good stories. I've already been, seeing some of the writers and the ideas that they're coming up with. So really hope that you'll come by the website and join the conversation this week. Obviously, rough times right now, but the Twins still have a chance to avert disaster, and we'll hope that they can. No matter how it goes down, we'll be back with you next week. So thanks for joining us for this slightly extended edition of the Week in Review. Take care, everybody.